I never thought I'd be a widow at 34, but here I am sitting at my kitchen table at 7:00 a.m., trying to get my 7-year-old son Tommy ready for school while fighting back tears. It's been 4 months since the accident at the research lab took Daniel from us, but sometimes it feels like yesterday. Mom, I can't find my science homework, Tommy calls from his room, his voice tinged with panic. Check your blue folder, sweetheart, I reply, pouring coffee I probably won't have time to drink. The one with the planets on it. The first few months after Daniel's death were a blur of paperwork, tears, and sleepless nights. I honestly don't know how I would have made it through without Elena and Robert, my in-laws. They've been absolute angels, picking Tommy up from school 3 days a week so I can focus on establishing my new consulting business. I stop by their place afterward to get him, and every single time, Elena tries to give me money. Cassandra, please, she says today, pressing an envelope into my hand. We want to help. Elena, I can't keep taking this, I protest, but her kind eyes meet mine. The settlement from the lab was substantial, I know, she says softly. But let us do this. It's not about the money, it's about family. She's right about the settlement. The research facility paid out $800,000 after Daniel's accident, acknowledging their safety protocols had failed. Between that and my fledgling business as an environmental consultant, we're managing financially. But with Elena and Robert, it's never been about money, it's about the love they show us every day. If only my own parents were half as supportive. Mom and Dad have always made it clear that my older sister Vanessa was their golden child. Now they extend that same favoritism to her children over Tommy. Last weekend was typical. Tommy was excited to see his grandparents, but within 20 minutes, Mom was complaining about his questions. Why does the ocean look blue when water is clear? Tommy asked, looking up from his science book. Cassandra, can't you control him? Mom sighed, rolling her eyes. He's always asking questions about everything. Vanessa's kids never give us this much trouble. Dad nodded in agreement. Here, Tommy, why don't you play some games instead? Look, I downloaded some new ones. But Tommy didn't want games. He wanted to talk, to learn, to connect. Meanwhile, Vanessa's 2 children sat in the corner, completely absorbed in their tablets, barely acknowledging anyone's presence, and my parents held this up as the ideal behavior. I've learned to bite my tongue. Growing up as the less favored child, I got used to these comparisons long ago. Now I just shake my head and stay silent when they praise Vanessa's parenting while criticizing mine. At least they help occasionally with Tommy watching him when I have client meetings or picking him up if both Elena and Robert are busy. It was supposed to be just another Tuesday dinner at my parents' house. The warning signs were there from the moment I walked in. Mom had made my favorite salmon, which she usually only does when she wants something. Dad was unusually chatty, asking about work, about Tommy, about everything, really. They were building up to something, I just didn't know what. So, Cassandra, Mom said carefully, cutting her fish into perfect squares, we've been meaning to ask you something. How much was Daniel's settlement payout? The question hit me like a slap. I nearly choked on my water, completely blindsided by such a direct inquiry about something so personal. Maybe it was the shock, or maybe I was just tired of keeping secrets from my parents. But I answered honestly. About $800,000, I said quietly. The fork in Mom's hand clattered against her plate. Dad's head snapped up so fast I thought he might hurt himself. They stared at me like I'd just announced I'd won the lottery. Well, Mom said, putting down her fork deliberately, what are you planning to do with all that money? I could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. I've invested most of it, I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. It's for Tommy's future, his college education. Maybe help him buy an apartment when he's older. Daniel and I always talked about, but that's years away, Dad interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. You should be thinking about the present, Cassandra. About yourself and your family. The way he said family made it clear he wasn't talking about Tommy. You could do so much with that money now, Mom chimed in, leaning forward eagerly. You could help your family people who need it today, not save it all for some distant future that might not even... I'm not discussing my finances anymore. I cut her off, my voice sharper than I intended. The silence that followed was deafening. I thought that would be the end of it. I expected my parents to give me the silent treatment for at least a month, It's what they always did when I didn't live up to their expectations. But to my surprise, Mom called just a week later. "We're having a family dinner on Sunday," she announced, her voice warm as if nothing had happened. "Vanessa and the kids will be there too. You have to come, sweetie." Something about her tone made me uneasy, but I agreed. When I arrived that Sunday, Vanessa was already there with her children, both glued to their tablets as usual. As we sat down to eat, Mom started talking about rising prices, bills piling up, and how hard it was to make ends meet these days. "Everything's just so expensive now," she sighed, passing the potatoes. "Your father and I barely have enough for a normal life anymore." As Mom dabbed at her eyes with a napkin, talking about rising grocery prices and utility bills, Vanessa cleared her throat and sat up straighter. "I've been thinking," she announced, looking around the table with that same self-righteous expression she'd worn since we were kids. "Cassandra and I should help Mom and Dad financially. I'll send them $500 every month. I wish I could do more, but you know how it is, Greg's the only one working, and with 2 kids." She trailed off, letting that sink in before turning to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "But you, Cassandra, you should send them $2,000 monthly." "Excuse me?" I nearly choked on my water. "Well, it makes sense," Vanessa pressed on. "You earn well with your new business, and you only have 1 child to support. Plus, with your situation, you have other income now." My blood boiled at her careful avoidance of mentioning Daniel's death directly. I wanted to scream that I was a widow, that I didn't have a husband's income to rely on anymore, that the other income she was referring to was meant for my son's future. But Mom was already clapping her hands in delight, and Dad was beaming like it was Christmas morning. "Oh, girls," Mom exclaimed. "You don't know what this means to us." I sat there, torn between anger and disbelief, watching my family's expectant faces. The words of refusal died in my throat. I'd spent my whole life trying to earn their approval, and here they were, putting a price tag on it. "Fine," I heard myself say. "I'll help out." The first transfer hurt the most. $2,000 gone, with a few clicks. I told myself it was worth it if it meant more family support with Tommy, but that fantasy quickly unraveled. "Mom, could you pick Tommy up from school today? Elena has a doctor's appointment and I have a client meeting." "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry." Mom's voice crackled through the phone. "I've got such a headache today. You know how my migraines get." This became a pattern. Every time I needed help with Tommy, there was an excuse. Mom was too busy, she was tired, she had errands to run, her back was acting up. Meanwhile, the $2,000 left my account like clockwork every month. One particularly frustrating Thursday, after Mom claimed she couldn't watch Tommy because she might be coming down with something, I called Elena in desperation. "Of course we'll pick him up," Elena said without hesitation. "Robert's already heading to the school. He loves their little chats on the drive home. Tommy's been telling him all about their science project." I hung up the phone and sat at my desk, fighting back tears. $2,000 a month bought me nothing but excuses from my own mother, while my mother-in-law dropped everything to help without asking for a penny. December crept up on me that year. We'd always spent Christmas at my parents' house, it was tradition. The whole family gathered there, exchanging gifts, sharing meals, making memories. The call came exactly a week before Christmas. I was helping Tommy with his homework when my phone lit up with Mom's number. "Cassandra, honey," she started, using that syrupy sweet tone that always preceded bad news. "About Christmas Eve, we've decided to do something different this year. We're having an adults-only evening. No children allowed." The pencil I was holding snapped in my hand. "What?" "It's just that we want to do something more sophisticated this year," Mom continued, as if she was discussing something as trivial as changing dinner plans. "You know, wine, adult conversation." "But it's Christmas," the first protested, moving away so Tommy couldn't hear. "What am I supposed to do with Tommy?" "Oh, that's easy," she replied, her voice light and dismissive. "You can leave him with Elena and Robert. They'd love to have him, I'm sure. You'll come by around 7. After hanging up, I stared at Tommy, who was still working on his math problems, completely unaware that his grandmother had just uninvited him from Christmas. My heart ached watching him concentrate on his multiplication tables. his tongue sticking out just like Daniel used to do. I spent the next week debating what to do. The thought of celebrating without Tommy felt wrong, but skipping the family Christmas entirely seemed too dramatic. Finally, I came up with a compromise. I'd leave Tommy with Elena and Robert for a few hours, make an appearance at my parents' house to exchange gifts and greetings, then head back to celebrate properly with my in-laws and son. On Christmas Eve, I pulled up to my parents' house alone, a bag of carefully wrapped presents in hand. The driveway was full of cars more than usual for our family gatherings. Walking up to the front door, I could hear laughter and Christmas music spilling out into the cold December air. I opened the door and the world seemed to tilt sideways. The house was packed with relatives, aunts, uncles, cousins, but that wasn't what stopped me in my tracks. There, running through the living room with paper crowns on their heads, were Vanessa's 2 children. And near the Christmas tree, I spotted my cousin Linda's children helping themselves to cookies. More kids appeared in my line of sight. My cousin Mark's twins, my cousin Susan's teenager. The room suddenly felt too hot, too tight. I stood in the doorway, the gift bag hanging limply from my hand as the reality of the situation sank in. This wasn't an adults-only party at all. It was a party where only my son wasn't welcome. I stood frozen, my mind struggling to process the scene before me. My Aunt Marie was the first to spot me. "Cassandra, sweetheart!" She rushed over to hug me, then looked around expectantly. "Where's little Tommy? Don't tell me he's sick on Christmas Eve." Before I could answer, my cousin Peter chimed in. "Yeah, where's our favorite little scientist? Lucas has been wanting to show him his new telescope." More relatives gathered around, all asking the same question. Where was Tommy? Why had I come alone? Each inquiry felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I couldn't form words, couldn't explain what I didn't understand myself. Through the crowd, I spotted my mother in the kitchen, arranging cookies on a Christmas-themed platter, as if everything was perfectly normal, as if she hadn't just excluded her own grandson from a family celebration. "Excuse me," I managed to say, pushing past my concerned relatives. My feet carried me to the kitchen on autopilot, anger building with each step. "Mom," I said, my voice low and controlled. "Can we talk privately?" Something in my tone made her put down the platter. I led her into the hallway, away from prying eyes and ears. "You told me this was an adults-only party," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "You specifically told me not to bring Tommy, so why are Vanessa's kids here? Why are all the cousins' children here?" Mom straightened her Christmas sweater, not meeting my eyes. "Well, that's different." "Different how?" "Those children," she said, gesturing vaguely toward the living room, "know how to behave at formal gatherings. They're well-mannered." I stared at her in disbelief. "Well-mannered?" "Tommy is one of the most polite children I know. His teachers praise his behavior constantly. Elena and Robert always say..." "Oh, Elena and Robert," Mom interrupted, rolling her eyes. "They spoil him, encourage all those endless questions. The other children, they deserve to be here more. They know their place." As if on cue, a commotion erupted from the dining room. Vanessa's youngest, Kevin, had grabbed a handful of deviled eggs and was throwing them at his sister. The eggs sailed across the room, splattering against Lily's new Christmas dress as she shrieked. I turned back to my mother, raising an eyebrow. "Yes, I can clearly see their superior manners on display." Mom's face hardened. "That's just children being children. But when Tommy asks questions about how things work, that's unacceptable behavior." "Don't be so dramatic, Cassandra. He's fine with Elena and Robert. I'm leaving," I announced, turning toward the door. "I'm going back to my son," Mom shrugged, examining her manicure. "Fine. Leave if you want to make a scene. But put your gifts under the tree first. We're opening them after dinner." Something snapped inside me as I stood there, watching my mother's dismissive shrug. Before I could second-guess myself, I walked into the center of the living room. I cleared my throat loudly, the sound cutting through the holiday music and chatter. Heads turned. Conversations died mid-sentence, and suddenly all eyes were on me. "Several of you have asked why I came alone tonight," I began, my voice stronger than I expected. "Why Tommy isn't here celebrating Christmas with his family." Vanessa started to move toward me, but I held up my hand. Let me finish. I'm here alone because a week ago, Mom called and told me this was an adults only party. I was specifically told not to bring Tommy. What? Aunt Marie's voice cut through the silence. But all the children are here. We didn't know anything about a ban on children, Uncle Steve added, looking confused. Mom stepped forward, her face flushed. Cassandra, this isn't the time. Oh, I think this is exactly the time, I continued, my voice rising slightly. Because, you see, there wasn't really a ban on children. There was a ban on one child. My child. My son, who apparently isn't good enough for this family's Christmas celebration. The room erupted in murmurs. I saw shocked faces, disapproving looks directed at my parents, and confused children watching the adult drama unfold. But that's not even the best part, I laughed. But there was no humor in it. While my son isn't good enough to attend Christmas, I'm apparently good enough to send my parents $2,000 every month. And Vanessa here sends $500. Vanessa's husband Greg's head snapped up. Wait, what? What $500? The color drained from Vanessa's face as Greg turned to her. You're sending your parents money every month? From where? Our account barely covers the mortgage as it is. Vanessa's composure cracked, her face flushing red as she looked between our parents and her husband. I never actually sent any money, she stammered. Mom and Dad asked me to say I was sending $500 so Cassandra would agree to help them financially. They said if she thought I was contributing too. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched comprehension dawn on my relatives' faces as they pieced together what had happened, how my parents and sister had manipulated me into supporting them while simultaneously excluding my child from family events. You're telling me, Aunt Caroline's voice rang out, sharp and clear, that you scammed your own daughter out of thousands of dollars? You're nothing but con artists, using your own daughter like an ATM while treating her kid like dirt. That's low, even for you two. The room erupted in overlapping voices, some expressing disgust, others demanding explanations. Vanessa was trying to explain herself to an increasingly angry Greg, while my parents stood there, their carefully crafted facade crumbling around them. I raised my hand, silencing the ongoing arguments around me. I have something else to say. The room fell quiet again, all eyes returning to me. Mom and Dad stood frozen by the Christmas tree, their faces ashen. Vanessa was still trying to explain herself to Greg, but even they stopped to listen. From this moment on, I said, my voice steady and clear, I will no longer be sending you any money, and I won't be maintaining any relationship with any of you. Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out, leaving the bag of gifts by the door. The sound of the door closing behind me felt final, like the ending of a chapter I should have finished long ago. Sitting in my car, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. With a few quick taps, I canceled the monthly transfer to my mother's account. It felt like cutting off a chain I'd been dragging behind me for months. The drive to Elena and Robert's house seemed to take both forever and no time at all. When I pulled into their driveway, I could see Tommy through the window, helping Elena decorate Christmas cookies. The sight of him, happy and loved, brought tears to my eyes. We spent the rest of Christmas Eve with Elena and Robert, decorating cookies, singing carols, and watching Tommy's eyes light up as he helped Robert arrange the nativity scene. This, I realized, was what family should feel like. The next morning, while Tommy was still asleep, surrounded by the presents Santa had brought, my phone rang. It was Aunt Caroline. You might want to hear how things ended last night, she said without preamble. After you left, it was like a dam broke. Uncle Steve stood up and said he couldn't stay in the house another minute. Then Aunt Marie and I followed. Pretty soon, everyone was gathering their coats and kids. I listened as she described how the relatives had left en masse, not even bothering to say goodbye to my parents. Some had apparently made very loud comments about manipulative behavior and family shame as they walked out. And Greg? I asked quietly. Oh, honey. He was livid. Packed up the kids right there and then. Told Vanessa he needed time to think about their marriage. Said he was taking the children to his parents' house for Christmas. Vanessa was crying. Your parents were trying damage control, but it was too late. I could hear her take a deep breath. I want you to know, Cassandra, we're all on your side. What they did to you and Tommy, it's unforgivable. After hanging up, I sat on my bed, processing everything. My phone started buzzing with notifications, text messages from Mom, Dad, and Vanessa. They all said variations of the same thing. We're sorry. We were wrong. Please talk to us. We can explain. I read each message once, then archived them without responding. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed in a peaceful blur. Tommy and I spent quiet evenings with Elena and Robert, played board games, watched holiday movies, and enjoyed the simple pleasure of being with people who truly loved us both. Then, on New Year's Eve morning, the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Mom and Dad standing on my porch, clutching a large, elaborately wrapped package. My heart thumped against my ribs as I debated whether to open the door. "Cassandra, we know you're home," Mom called out, her voice muffled through the door. "Please, we just want to talk." After a moment's hesitation, I opened the door but stayed firmly in the doorway, blocking their entrance. They looked smaller somehow, less intimidating than they had a week ago. "We brought this for Tommy," Dad said, holding out the package. Through the wrapping paper, I could see the logo of an expensive electronics store. "He doesn't need it," I replied, making no move to take the gift. "Please, Cassandra," Mom stepped forward. "We know we were wrong the way we treated Tommy, the manipulation with the money. We're truly sorry, and we want you to know," Dad added quickly, "that this isn't about the money you are sending us. We really do feel terrible about everything." I studied their faces, searching for sincerity. "Are you sorry because you realize what you did was wrong? Or are you sorry because the entire family knows what you did and won't speak to you anymore?" They exchanged glances, and in that brief look, I had my answer. "I think you should leave," I said quietly. "I don't believe you, and I don't trust you. Not anymore." "But we're family," Mom protested, tears welling up in her eyes. "No," I shook my head. "Family doesn't manipulate each other. Family doesn't exclude a child from Christmas. Family doesn't scheme and lie to get money. What you did, that's not family." They left eventually, still clutching the unwanted gift, their apologies trailing behind them as they walked to their car. I watched them drive away, feeling not sadness but relief. In the months that followed, I stuck to my decision. I didn't answer their calls or respond to their texts. Vanessa tried reaching out too, but I blocked her number. The money I had been sending to my parents went into Tommy's college fund instead. The funny thing about cutting toxic people out of your life is how much room it makes for better relationships to grow. Aunt Caroline started inviting us over for Sunday dinners. Uncle Steve and his wife had us over for barbecues where Tommy could play with his cousins. Everyone made a point of including him, asking about his interests, encouraging his questions. "Mom, why does Uncle Steve's pool have that funny smell?" Tommy asked one summer afternoon. "That's the chlorine, buddy," Uncle Steve answered before I could, launching into an explanation about water treatment and chemical reactions that had Tommy fascinated. I watched my son bloom under the attention and love of family members who actually wanted to know him, not change him. He started calling Elena and Robert Grandma and Grandpa exclusively now, and they continued to be our rocks, our safe harbor in any storm. Life settled into a new normal. My consulting business grew steadily, and I found myself actually enjoying the work. Helping companies reduce their environmental impact gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt since Daniel's death. Tommy thrived in school, particularly in science and math, just like his father. 6 months after the Christmas confrontation, I received a letter from a law firm. My first thought was that my parents were suing for grandparents' rights or some other desperate ploy to force their way back into our lives. But when I opened it, I found something entirely unexpected. "Dear Miss Cassandra Mitchell," it began, "we represent the estate of the late Mr. and Mrs. James Henderson. As executor of their will, I am writing to inform you that you have been named as a beneficiary. The Hendersons, they were our elderly neighbors when I was growing up. Miss S. Henderson had taught me to bake cookies and tell stories. Mr. Henderson had shown me how to identify constellations in the night sky. They had no children of their own, and after I left for college, we'd lost touch. According to the letter, they had left me their house, a beautiful craftsman in a neighborhood that had become increasingly desirable over the years. The property was now worth close to $1.2 million. They always said you were the daughter they never had, the lawyer explained when I called. They watched you grow up, and they were quite impressed with the woman you became. They followed your environmental work from afar and were particularly touched when they learned you were raising your son alone after your husband's passing. I sat down, overwhelmed by this unexpected gift from people who had seen something in me when my own parents couldn't. The next day, I took Tommy to see the house. It was larger than our current place, with a spacious backyard perfect for a curious boy who loved the outdoors. It was only 20 minutes from Elena and Robert, and the school district was excellent. "What do you think, buddy?" I asked as we walked through the sun-filled rooms. "Should we move here?" Tommy looked around thoughtfully, his fingers trailing along the built-in bookshelves. "I like it," he said finally. "It feels like a good place for us." We moved in a month later. The first night in our new home, Tommy and I sat on the back porch, looking up at the stars just as Mr. Henderson had taught me to do all those years ago. "Mom," Tommy said softly, "are you still sad about Grandma and Grandpa? The ones we don't see anymore?" I pulled him close, considering my answer carefully. "I'm sad about what could have been," I said finally, "but I'm happy about what is. We have Grandma Elena and Grandpa Robert. We have Aunt Caroline and Uncle Steve and all our cousins. And we have each other." He nodded, seemingly satisfied with my answer. "And we have the stars," he added, pointing upward. "Dad is up there too, right? Watching us?" "Yes," I whispered, my throat tight with emotion. "He's watching over us." A few weeks after we settled in, I received another unexpected letter, this one from my father. Unlike the desperate texts and voicemails I'd been ignoring, this one was different. It was short, just a few paragraphs, and for once, it didn't ask for anything. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he wrote. "I won't ask for your forgiveness because I don't deserve it. What we did to you and Tommy was unforgivable. I've started therapy to understand why I've always been so critical of you and so blind to the damage I've caused. Your mother isn't ready to face these truths yet, but I had to tell you that I finally see how wrong I was. I hope someday, when Tommy is older, he might want to know his grandfather a better version of me than the one he met. Until then, I wish you both nothing but happiness." I folded the letter and put it away, neither accepting nor rejecting its contents. Time would tell if my father's words represented genuine change or were just another manipulation. For now, I was content with the family we had built, a chosen family bound by love rather than obligation. That night, as I tucked Tommy into bed in his new room, he asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Mom, are we rich now? With this big house and everything?" I smiled, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. "We're rich in the ways that matter, buddy. We have people who love us for exactly who we are. That's worth more than any amount of money." He nodded solemnly, his eyes already growing heavy with sleep. "That's what I thought," he murmured. "We're the lucky ones." As I turned out his light and closed his door, I realized he was right. Despite everything, losing Daniel, the betrayal by my parents and sister, we had found our way to something genuine and precious. We were, indeed, the lucky ones. In the quiet of my new home, surrounded by the legacy of kindness from the Hendersons and the unconditional love of my chosen family, I finally felt at peace. The path forward wasn't perfect or guaranteed, but it was ours to walk together, Tommy and me, and the people who truly loved us both. And for the first time since Daniel died, I found myself looking toward the future, not with dread, but with hope. Story 2. My parents wouldn't pay. Just me. I was shocked and asked my mother why she was laughing. "Your household? So working for free is normal." A big payment notice appeared on my sister's phone at that very moment, and she grinned. "Perhaps you're simply not worth the money," she muttered in a mocking tone. I closed my phone and walked away from the company. Days later, something shocking happened. A misty morning in Grand Rapids, Michigan, as the streetlights still glowed in the early dawn, the Miller Property Management Office building was approached by a car. With her brown hair styled and wearing a basic suit, Jennifer Miller emerged from the ancient business vehicle with her usual light steps. Jennifer was, as usual, the first to arrive at the workplace after opening the entry and turning on the lights. She immediately reached for the cleaning supplies. She carefully wiped each desk, swept the floors, and watered the plants. Arriving before anyone else and staying later than everyone else, this had been her routine for the past 10 years. "Good morning, Benjamin?" As she watered the potted plant by the window, she spoke softly to it. Her father gave her this plant as a present on her first day of work. It had now grown brilliantly, giving the workplace a cozy pop of color. The morning sun streaming through the window illuminated the company nameplate. Red Miller Property Management. Since 220, founded by her father, Robert, the company had become a well-known name in Grand Rapids' property management industry. They specialized in managing high-end residential properties and enjoyed strong client trust. In particular, the inhabitants of Lakeview Estate, who had been with them from the company's foundation, strongly valued their thorough service. After graduating at the top of her class from graduate school with a degree in property management, Jennifer joined the family company. Her systematic attitude and earnest work ethic won great accolades from several clients. In the 10 years after joining, she hadn't missed a single day of work. She put her everything into the company's growth, but when the real estate market crashed 2 years ago, everything changed. The business's performance steadily declined. What began as a temporary remedy and compensation decrease had somehow become the norm. Despite having weathered the economic crisis 7 years ago, for some reason recovery wasn't progressing this time. Then, a year ago, her sister Patricia graduated from college and joined as an accountant. Dressed in the newest fashion and carrying fancy luggage, her sister was guaranteed an amazing beginning pay from day one. With her pearl necklace gleaming and perfect makeup, Patricia looked as if she had stepped out of a fashion magazine. Patricia must maintain a certain lifestyle because she is young. Appearances matter, their mother, Margaret, had stated, opting to offer her novice sister a big income. Jennifer's pay reductions persisted in the interim. Their father, Robert, occasionally showed apologetic expressions, but ultimately always followed his wife's decisions. Jennifer was once more going over the documents for meetings with significant clients today. She spent her days dealing with piles of paperwork, demands from current clients, and new property management contracts. In the opposite seat, Patricia was exploring photographs of new handbags on her smartphone while neglecting critical paperwork. "Have you completed processing that contract, Patricia?" "It's Lakeview Estates renewal documentation." "Oh, I was just about to do that. But tomorrow should go smoothly because I have lunch arrangements with several pals." Abandoning what sounded like a justification, Patricia started getting ready to depart early. Their parents remained silent on the matter. Rather, they observed with admiration, stating that because she is still young, she ought to have fun. Occasionally, they even reprimanded Jennifer, telling her to treat her sister with more kindness. In the twilight office, Jennifer let out a deep sigh. In her desk drawer lay 2 years' worth of pay stubs neatly arranged. Her pay had been cut from its previous $80,000 stow barely above minimum wage, as indicated by the columns of numbers. Even though living in company housing allowed her to barely maintain her lifestyle, every setback was a heavy burden on her heart, and her savings were slowly being exhausted. Outside the window, she could see Patricia climbing into her new BMW. In the waning light, the sleek black body shone brightly. How much longer will this go on? Jennifer shut down her computer silently, threw a dim light on the papers in front of them the following day. With her black leather binder in front of her, Jennifer sat up straight. Her simple navy suit was the same one she'd worn since joining the company 10 years ago. It was worn to every yearly wage review meeting and had taken on the appearance of a combat outfit. Her performance statistics and pay stubs from the previous 2 years were carefully arranged in the binder. The papers in her hands trembled a little. Was it anxiousness or feelings she was unable to control? Patricia, on the other hand, is lounging on her chair with her smartphone in hand while sporting the newest designer outfit. Her groomed, bright red nails periodically flashed a smile as she navigated her tablet. The conference room was filled with the aroma of pricey perfume. On her feet were new high heels that had just arrived that morning. They undoubtedly charged more than Jennifer's monthly wage. Father Robert looked exhausted as he studied the materials. Deep wrinkles now disfigured what was once a stately face. albeit he occasionally cast remorseful glances at his eldest daughter, Jennifer. He hurriedly averted his gaze. In his hands was a summary on the company's recent performance, though the surface stats didn't appear horrible. For some reason, the company's finances were tight. Mother Margaret sat in her customary chair, properly made up and nicely dressed. Under the fluorescent lights, her pricey pearl necklace gave off a gentle shine. There was nothing in her face to read, but there was a flicker of something like apprehension in her eyes. "Let's get started." The quiet was broken by Robert's voice. His voice no longer carried its former authority. After inhaling deeply, Jennifer opened her binder gently. On the page of her notepad was written "Last Chance" in red ink. Below those phrases were items she had prepared till late the night before. Patricia, Mom, and Dad. Her voice quivered slightly. Still, Jennifer gazed straight at her relatives. It was rare for someone of her mild temperament to address matters so directly. "Let's talk about my pay, please." Margaret waved her hand beautifully. Her pearl bracelet produced a pleasant sound. "Oh, once more? You are aware of the company's difficulties. Do you not?" "Yes, I do comprehend." However, Jennifer took one paper out of her binder. She had spent the previous evening making several revisions to the presentation. "These are my results over the previous 2 years. Customer satisfaction has increased by 15%. Contract cancellation rates are at an all-time low. Compared to the previous year, there have been 20% more new contracts, particularly via Lakeview Estate referrals." She placed the sheet filled with numbers in the center of the table. She urgently attempted to keep her palm from trembling. 2 years ago, I made $80,000, but today I barely make minimum wage." The business's performance, meanwhile, ceased showing statistics. Jennifer's comments were interrupted by Margaret's icy tone. Something in her voice sounded like panic. "Are you not a member of our family? When the business is having trouble, working for free should come naturally. We must support one another. I take it that we're giving you corporate housing?" Patricia's smartphone rang at that very time. The meeting room was filled with the discordant ring of a bell. The page displayed the whole $8,000 for the pay deposit. Patricia gave Jennifer a suggestive glance while grinning with enjoyment. Her fresh nails shined as they shone off the smartphone screen. "After all, what's the point of paying you, sis? You don't really have any accomplishments like I have." The meeting room's air froze. For an instant, even the morning sun that was shining through the window appeared to grow dimmer. Jennifer hastily wiped away the lone tear that trickled down her face with her handkerchief. The preceding 10 years of frantic effort rushed through her thoughts like a sequence of photographs. "I see, therefore I'm worthless." Jennifer rose up slowly, hugging her binder to her chest. "I now have a complete understanding." Jennifer headed directly to her workstation after leaving the meeting room. She started putting away 10 years' worth of memories by pulling a cardboard box out of her drawer. Benjamin the plant. On her first day, the family portrait was taken. She closed her first deal using this pen, an assortment of client thank you notes. Every object narrated a day she had been proud of. "What are you doing, sis? You're not sulking, please. That is really immature." Patricia spoke the remarks in a sarcastic manner. The office floor echoed with the piercing noises of her pricey shoes. Their parents had also walked out of the conference room and were watching Jennifer with perplexed looks. At last, she reached over to her desk and picked up the family photo, a keepsake from a decade ago when everyone was beaming. She took the picture out of the frame and put it in the box. Silently, the frame fell into the garbage. The office reverberated with the sound of glass smashing. "I appreciate all you've done." Jennifer bowed deeply and then started to walk while holding the box. She had a straighter back than before. "Where are you heading, please?" "Jennifer? Put an end to this bullshit!" She walked out of the office without stopping, ignoring the voices yelling behind her. She felt the warmth of the spring sun on her back. Her long brown hair fluttered in the breeze as her hair clip fell away. After 10 years of opening early in the morning and closing late at night, Jennifer left the company car keys at reception when she left the company. Today would be the last day of such routines, and she would be taking a cab home along the same road she had taken every day for the first time in a decade. Today, the cityscape appears quite different from the cab window. Jennifer closed her eyes a little in the back seat. She felt in her heart that this was the correct decision. And strange mood enveloped the Miller Property Management office the next morning. Normally, the coffee smell would be beginning to permeate the air by now, and Jennifer would have completed cleaning. However, there were no footsteps in the quiet, dark workplace this morning. Sarah from accounting was the first to show there after 7. She flicked on the lights in the gloomy workplace and glanced about uneasily. The plant! Benjamin was no longer where it usually was. Jennifer had cleaned her desk entirely. Strange! Sarah whispered these things, and Jennifer's desk looks just like that. The phone at reception rang. Hi there? Miller. Administration of Properties. Good morning. Regarding the urgent repairs we requested yesterday, this is from the Lakeview Estate Management Association. Sarah stopped. That matter was meant to be handled by Jennifer. I'm sorry. We will verify with the new supervisor. Jennifer was requested to take care of this. All we want to do is talk to her. The other end's voice became louder. The morning stillness was broken when Patricia showed up at work, her new heels making gaudy clicking noises. Patricia Lakeview Estate is on the line. Patricia hauled up the receiver with ease. Hi there. It's Miller here. I'm sorry to have kept you waiting. Jennifer, where are you? My sister. Okay. That's sufficient. The contract renewal will be postponed. Today at the Management Association, we will talk about this. The line died. The color faded from Patricia's face. The biggest customer of the business was Lakeview Estate. Is their contract renewal actually at risk? Employees kept showing up for work. As they became aware of Jennifer's absence, worried voices began to circulate. Margaret and Robert showed up for work. The workplace was in pandemonium at a time when business should have already been well underway. What's happening? There was a touch of terror in Margaret's voice. At that moment, a pale-faced Carol from accounting burst in. This is awful. The tax returns. One after the other, there's a mound of expired ones. Patricia's papers was found to include unprocessed crucial documents, papers pertaining to taxes, methods for social insurance, payroll computation information. Everything was piled up and delayed. No! Later that afternoon, Robert fell back into a chair. Major clients poured in their inquiries. Margaret, however, made a valiant effort to patch things up. The clients' responses were icy. 3 significant clients, including Lakeview Estate, had sent notices of contract review by evening. What's going on? The following day, Margaret lost her pricey designer handbag. Other issues were discovered. Patricia's desk included a number of unprocessed paperwork, including a tax audit notification that was a grave oversight. Next week was the deadline. But the paperwork that was required had not even begun. I was unaware of that. Patricia's bright red lipstick trembled on her lips. You were unaware? Margaret yelled at Patricia for the first time. Day by day, the office became less and less vibrant. 1 week later, Tom, who worked in sales, made his resignation. I can no longer work in this workplace without Jennifer. 3 additional workers then put in their resignations, one after the other. 2 weeks later, 40% of their main clients had sent notifications canceling their contracts. Compared to the prior year, sales showed a startling 70% drop. The bank got in touch with them and recommended that their loans be reviewed in light of Miller Property Management's current circumstances. And when the tax audit began, Patricia's inappropriate accounting practices were discovered one after another. Unpaid invoices stacked high on Robert's desk. The company's bank balance had fallen to critical levels. How did this happen? Margaret covered her face, tears smearing her makeup. The fluorescent lights shone on her pricey rings. Patricia had to part with her brand new BMW. I need money. She would no longer be receiving her new bags. Over time, the workplace plants that were neglected started to lose their leaves, in the same spot where Jennifer had watered them every day. Then the pivotal moment arrived. After Jennifer Miller resigned, Lakeview Estates sent out notice of a complete contract termination. We have judged it is difficult to maintain our commercial connection with your firm. The document fell out of Robert's grasp as soon as he finished reading that line. The firm his father had poured his passion into that Jennifer had safeguarded and fostered. Everything was disintegrating with a crash. The air conditioner in the workplace stopped working. An overdue power bill blew in the breeze on the desk. The setting sun, seen from the office window, put a vivid hue on the days of bygone splendor. In a quiet residential area on the outskirts of Grand Rapids, Jennifer's apartment doorbell rang one spring day as sunlight streamed down. "Hey, Jennifer, listen to us." Her father, Robert's exhausted voice slipped through the door. Her parents' look on the living room sofa was unrecognizable from a month before. Margaret's previously flawless makeup was smudged, and there were white streaks in her hair, and Robert's back was stooped down. Instead of their normal high-end labels, their simple attire stuck out oddly. "I apologize. Truly sorry." Robert pressed his head to the floor. Margaret sobbed next to them and bent low in apologies. Patricia pouted and leaned against the wall with her arms folded. "You left, and now the business is in disarray. You should come back straight immediately." At such comments, Margaret firmly chastised Patricia for the first time. "Be silent. Do you know how much damage your irresponsible work has caused?" Her voice broke up, and she bowed deeply again. "Jennifer, I was wrong. It was all my arrogance." The phrases "a world's best dad" and "to my beloved mother" suddenly felt absurd as Jennifer quietly brewed tea and set it in front of her parents in the cups they had previously used at the workplace. "We lost Lakeview Estate, and half of our major clients have terminated their contracts." Robert's words seemed to be squeezed out. "The tax audit also uncovered major irregularities. The bank is cutting off our loans. What are you looking for from me?" Jennifer's voice was calm. "We want you to return to the business." Robert looked straight at Jennifer, but not simply to return as CEO. Patricia spoke louder. "No," giving her managerial responsibility. "Keep silent." This time, Robert hushed Patricia in a forceful tone. "Your ineptitude has been abundantly established." Margaret cautiously removed a picture from her bag. A family photo from 20 years ago when the company was established. Beside a younger Robert, a happy young Jennifer. This grin. "We removed it." Margaret's voice shook. "But I feel it's not too late. Rebuild the business, please. Rebuild our family." Jennifer got to her feet and went to the window. From there, she had a view of the corporate housing, a site that had many memories for her. "I have health issues." Jennifer pivoted. Her expression was harsh but dignified. "First, complete authority. It is necessary to assign a CEO. No family feelings influence management choices." Robert nodded profoundly. "Second, all employee pay has to be adjusted to reflect current market rates. A performance evaluation system based on ability and contribution must be developed." Margaret nodded softly. And finally, Jennifer proceeded in an exceptionally forceful tone. "The whole amount of all outstanding salaries for the previous 2 years must be paid, as just recompense for my efforts. But we don't have that type of funding." Robert began to argue there is a way. Jennifer pulled out a document from her desk. "Since leaving, I've been in contact with numerous investors. They're considering funding provided we rebuild the company." Patricia wore a sour face. "Will we actually follow Big Sister's instructions? We're the Millers, aren't we?" "That's plenty!" Margaret got to her feet and gave Patricia a firm slap on the cheek. "Do you comprehend how much your lavish lifestyle has affected the company? Harmed our family?" Patricia went quiet, as if fully comprehending her own errors for the first time. "All conditions are acceptable to us." Once more, Robert bowed deeply. "And please forgive me. As a father, as a manager, I was so dumb." Cherry blossoms were strewn by spring winds outside the window. A time of transition, a moment for fresh starts. Miller Property Management hosted a news conference the next day. "Jennifer Miller has been named our company's CEO with immediate effect." Jennifer showed up to the conference looking elegant. Her resolve as the new executive was evident in her understated yet sophisticated suit. "I will definitely rebuild this company." Her forceful voice burst through the conference room into a corporation where clients can trust us and staff can work with pride. Flashes on the camera went off. Margaret and Robert lowered their heads in silence at the rear. For the first time, Patricia noticed a strength she had never seen in her sister's back. Jennifer started cleaning the office that night, exactly as she had done when she used to come in early. However, she wasn't alone herself this time. "Let me assist you." With hesitation, Patricia grabbed a mop. Jennifer gave a little nod as her sister pulled off her high heels and knelt on the floor. The morning sun began flowing in by the window, where a fresh potted plant had been placed. The new Miller Property Management's inauguration appeared to be blessed by the light of regeneration. The old vibrancy was making a comeback to the Miller Property Management office 6 months later. 7 in the morning, when Jennifer got to work. As her sister diligently polished the floor, Patricia was already cleaning, replacing the expensive suits with more casual office wear. "Patricia, good morning." "Good morning." "I've already prepared the papers for today's weekly meeting." Her sister's speech was devoid of any hint of her prior haughtiness. After relearning the fundamentals of accounting and finance, the documents were arranged neatly on the desk. She had become one of the most meticulous employees. By the window, a new plant sparkled in the morning sun, named Benjamin Jr. It had become a symbol of the office cared after by all employees in turn. In the reception room, Robert read the newspaper wearing reading glasses, having stepped back from administration. He now concentrated on serving as an advisor to younger employees. Margaret, in a plain outfit, was making coffee next to him. "Could I attend the meeting with Lakeview Estate today, Jennifer?" Margaret hesitated before asking. A soft smile that was more appropriate for a mother had taken the place of her pricey accessories. "Of sure, Mom. Let's start by holding our weekly family meeting on Wednesdays at 8 a.m. The new Miller Company had made the family gathering a custom. The performance from the previous month was shown on the conference room whiteboard. 80% of pre-crisis sales had been regained. Many of the clients who had left were slowly coming back. "Greetings to everybody." Jennifer began the gathering. "Let's review first." Patricia carefully opened her supplies last week. Indeed, the accounting department's report, every problem found during the tax audit has been fixed. As planned, the new accounting system is functioning. That's fantastic progress. Margaret then gave her a sincere smile in reference to the Lakeview Estate contract renewal. Robert proceeded while studying the materials. "The assessment of the Management Association is outstanding." They commended Patricia's handling in particular. Her sister's cheeks reddened slightly. "I will never again betray the firm and our family." Her gentle words of resolve were met with heartfelt nods from the entire family. 9 a.m. Under the new employee training system, regular business hours started. Young staff members worked with excitement after adopting the merit-based assessment system. The motivation of the workforce had considerably increased. "President Miller, could you please review the presentation materials for the new project?" "Patricia, could you help me with this expenditure processing?" "Mister, could we get another lecture on the fundamentals of property management, Robert?" Energetic voices rang across the workplace. 3 p.m. The chairman of the Lakeview Estate Management Association visited. Patricia and Jennifer were sitting next to each other, responding to the conference room's business meeting. "The changes are astonishing," he noted admiringly. "Patricia's growth in particular is remarkable. By watching my sister's back, I finally understood." Patricia reacted with a real statement, what it meant to be a true professional. 6 p.m. The family took part in volunteer work in the community. The neighborhood's trust was strengthened by the company's community cleanup efforts as part of its social responsibility. On their way back after cleaning, Patricia spoke up. "For my wedding next month, will you be my maid of honor?" Jennifer gently embraced her sister. "Naturally. You're my precious little sister." 8 p.m. An email landed on Jennifer's desk as she completed her last business check of the day. "Would it be possible for your organization to oversee our new development project?" A request from a prominent developer. A new wind was definitely beginning to blow. Her desk was adorned with a new family photo. Everyone wore genuine smiles. The antique family photo in its frame is next to it. Those former smiles had gained even more radiance through their new bonds. President Patricia said, "Good work today," after completing her last inspections. "I provided you today's management numbers by email, up 15% over last month." "Thank you." "You worked hard. It'll still take time to catch up to utilize." The sisters exchanged smiles as they exited the office together, not forgetting to water the plant beside the window one final time. The family of 4 walked to supper with their parents waiting at the entryway. There was no denying that their shadows, illuminated by the lamps, had gotten closer. The clock displayed 9 p.m., the same time when Jennifer used to work overtime alone. Now the lovely sound of family laughing resonated. 2 years later, Patricia was promoted to sales manager following marriage and baby. She had grown even more depth as a person. Robert and Margaret were trustworthy presences, looking over the next generation while actively caring for their grandkids. And Jennifer had turned the company into the region's leading property management agency. In the reception room of the new office building hung a big family tree under the words Miller Property Management. Inscribed with optimism were the names of the grandkids, who will continue as the 3rd generation. An ending is a fresh beginning. Family relationships can sometimes be wounded and nearly severed, but by confronting one another truly and acknowledging each other, they can be reborn into something stronger and deeper. This family's own experience had demonstrated this. Story 3. My parents prepared a Thanksgiving feast except for me and my daughter. Shocked. As my mother spoke icily, I turned to face her. The table is for the family. A poor single mother doesn't deserve this, my sister said in jest. My daughter saw my nephew's plate and broke into tears. Silently, the first took her hand and walked out. The Victorian mansion stood with quiet dignity as fallen leaves danced in the wind in the late November suburbs of St. Paul, Minnesota, where a cool breeze lingers along Summit Avenue. Among them was the Carters' majestic 2-story mansion. A brand new Lexus sat in the driveway. Excitedly, Elizabeth Morgan called out as she got out of the car, holding the phone. Mom, I just landed a $1,500 so OO property from a new client. Oh, that's fantastic. Patricia Carter welcomed her daughter at the entryway, arms outstretched. Her careful makeup and cashmere sweater from Nordstrom added an air of elegance to her bearing. Jennifer Wilson, in the meantime, was painstakingly updating her notes on senior care at the medical care facility in the area that afternoon. For more than 10 years, she had been the nurse in charge of her parents' medical treatment. Though reticent by nature, her reliable talents and commitment had gained her significant regard inside the facility. Wilson, thank you as always for your meticulous work, a senior nurse yelled. In return, she grinned. Thank you! That's the end of my shift for today. Back at her apartment near Como Park, her 10-year-old daughter, Lily, had finished her homework and was waiting. Mom, see, I tried a new cookie recipe I found on YouTube. The kitchen counter displayed slightly misshapen but lovingly made chocolate chip cookies. Since losing her father in a car accident 2 years ago, Lily had been trying her best to stay cheerful. She'd been honing her cooking skills by watching cooking shows and helping with simple chores at her grandparents' house. Her pure kindness warmed the hearts of those around her. They looked delicious. Jennifer embraced her daughter. Our annual salary of $65,000 wasn't considered wealthy in this area, but the time spent with her daughter was priceless. Elizabeth was boasting about her son Tommy's grades in the Carters' living room. My son received another flawless math grade. The 12-year-old nephew was intensely absorbed in his latest iPad, sank into the sofa that day too. Robert Carter read his newspaper in silence. The former high school teacher had recently begun rereading the same articles multiple times. Everyone observed the early indications of moderate dementia, but preferred not to say anything. Patricia was keen to keep up appearances with the neighbors, even though she had to attend the hospital 3 times a week due to high blood pressure and diabetes. Let's make this Thanksgiving truly memorable, Elizabeth. I've ordered a butterball turkey. Though the Carters appeared affluent on the surface, they were actually deeply in debt due to rising medical and living costs. Jennifer sensed this reality, but the gulf between the sisters had grown too wide for anyone to bridge. At dusk, Lily showed a handmade card she created at her grandparents' house. I'm planning to present this to Grandma during Thanksgiving. Simple artwork and phrases showed genuine affection. On Thanksgiving Day, Jennifer's automobile cautiously drew up in front of the Carter mansion. Lily held a homemade pumpkin pie carefully in the passenger seat. Do you suppose Grandma and Grandpa will enjoy it, Mom? Lily's voice was a mixture of concern and optimism. Of course they will. You made it with so much love. Jennifer encouraged her daughter while staring at the lineup of fancy automobiles parked out front. The scene unavoidably highlighted the difference between the sisters' worlds as they got out of the car. A cool north breeze stroked their cheeks. Lily pulled the car out to go with her pie. She had worked hard on the pumpkin pie since the previous day. Using a recipe book by Betty Crocker, she had measured the spices carefully, using YouTube videos several times. The card read to my beloved grandma and grandpa in careful handwriting. They were met by a maid when they rang the doorbell. "Come in, please." She had a courteous yet rather aloof demeanor. The moment Jennifer stepped into the living room, she felt something was off. Williams-Sonoma tablecloths and Pottery Barn fine china were arranged perfectly on the table. The room was elegantly decorated in the Martha Stewart style, as if it had been taken from an interior design magazine. Bottles of fine wine were arranged around an expensive butterball turkey green bean casserole, sweet potato casserole, and intricate cranberry sauce that sat in the center. However, the table was only set for 8 persons. Grandma Lily attempted to rush over innocently. That's when Patricia gave her a chilly glare. "Jennifer, we have special visitors today. Important clientele from Elizabeth's real estate business." The warmth of the mother she had known was gone from her voice. Lily stood clutching her baked pie, eagerly glancing at the table. "Grandma, where are our seats?" The air froze in that instant. Patricia stared down at Lily from her height and coldly remarked, "These chairs are for family." Elizabeth smirked as she added, "For low-income individuals from single-parent households, it would not be suitable. It would be rude to our customers to have folks like you around for supper." All of the family members in the living room turned away. Nobody dared to dispute these harsh remarks. Tommy, 12, was seated in front of what seemed like a specially made children's dining table. The dessert and turkey gratin are presented beautifully. Seeing this, big tears began to pour from Lily's eyes. "Mom!" Her voice faltered. Jennifer discreetly grasped her daughter's hand. "Come on, Lily!" Her voice was very calm. Because of Lily's commitment, the baked pumpkin pie remained warm and aromatic on the side table. Nobody made an effort to stop them from going. Outside, the sound of the heavy door closing reverberated softly. Already, the sun was beginning to set. Jennifer clung to Lily as they got inside the car. "I apologize." "Lily, Mommy is to blame for this." "Did I make a mistake, Mom?" The question from Lily broke Jennifer's heart. "You didn't do anything wrong, my dear. You make a fantastic daughter." As the sun sank, the ginkgo trees along Summit Avenue glowed brightly. The picture of her childhood home in the rearview mirror seemed strangely familiar as the Honda CR-V gradually drew away. The automobile was gentle and silent. The radio played Christmas tunes that foreshadowed the coming chilly season. Lily stared out the window and said nothing. The grief of a youngster forced to grow up too soon was evident in her little profile. It was already growing dark when they arrived at their apartment close to Como Park. Jennifer had decided as she rode the elevator, this would be the time to stop years of patient perseverance. Silently, Lily entered the flat and made her way directly to the kitchen. "Can I bake cookies, Mom?" She made a valiant effort to hide her sadness in her voice. "Indeed." "Naturally." "Let's make them together." That night, mother and daughter stood in the kitchen till late perusing the Betty Crocker recipe book. Together, they experimented with novel cookie recipes. The smell of vanilla and the warmth of the oven filled their little apartment kitchen. Though not lavish, it was true family time wrapped in real love. A week after Thanksgiving, as Minnesota's winter was set to begin in earnest, Jennifer gazed at the missed calls from her mother while wandering around the corridors of Regents Hospital. Over 10 missed calls, yet her finger wouldn't touch the call button. Miss Wilson, Miss S. Carter's blood sugar levels are at hazardous levels. She was given an emergency chart by a coworker. Medication and appointments had been neglected, according to the doctor's report. "I'm concerned about your mother's condition. Since last week, she has started canceling appointments." As he explained that her diabetes numbers are extremely unstable, the doctor scowled. She could require emergency transportation this weekend. Jennifer let out a long sigh at hearing these remarks. She had always taken care of her parents' prescriptions and accompanied them to hospital appointments. Despite being financially supported by their parents, Elizabeth remained obstinate and returned to her flat near Como Park, claiming her job. Lily was in the kitchen honing her cooking skills. "Look, Mom, I discovered a new recipe for Christmas cookies." There was a tinge of loneliness in her happy voice. She had abruptly lost the time she had spent learning to cook at her grandparents' place. After all, the telephone rang. Jenny, her father, gave it to her this time. The tone of her father's voice was softer than normal. "I've been having problems recalling the names of my medications lately." Jennifer was unable to sleep during her shift at the care facility that night. She was well familiar with the process of dementia. It was obvious that her father's symptoms were getting worse. She met Elizabeth at the church community center the following day. "It appears to be difficult." Elizabeth sneered as she clutched her pricey designer purse. "However, it was you who left our parents behind." "Left behind?" Jennifer's voice was tremulous. "Who do you think has been managing their medical care for the past 10 years? "Well, isn't that your job? Are you a nurse?" Elizabeth shrugged. "As a premium real estate agent, I lead a private existence. I have to keep up certain looks." Those words filled Jennifer with intense anger. But much more than that, a terrible melancholy welled up inside her. The gulf between the sisters had become too wide to bridge. A week later, Patricia was rushed to the emergency room. Her blood sugar levels had climbed to hazardous levels. The ER physician, who has been handling her prescriptions up to this point, clarified. "Elizabeth, my sister," opened her mouth to speak, then stopped. At that point, in a corner of the hospital room, Robert was continuously asking the same question. "What day is it, Patty? Patty? Which day is it?" The stress had abruptly exacerbated his dementia symptoms. An appointment with a social worker was scheduled for the following day. "In this case, home care is no longer possible," the social worker said quietly. "Professional care will be required around the clock, but there will be costs." Elizabeth's voice lifted. "Insurance coverage is limited," the social worker continued. "The expenses will have to be split among the family." Elizabeth's glamorous life as a luxury real estate agent was actually based on debt, and her expression clouded at these words. Auto loans for high-end cars, payments for products with a brand, the fees for her son's expensive school. Their finances had been taxed by the expenses of keeping up appearances. The Carters' standing in the church community started to quickly deteriorate a few days later. Rumors spread swiftly. In the affluent Summit Avenue neighborhood, rumors of the Carters' demise started to spread. Lily, meanwhile, experimented with new recipes daily. "These cookies are for Grandpa, Mom." She opened her mouth to speak, then stopped. Her small hands kneaded the dough a little harder. Jennifer once bumped into her mom in the hospital corridor. The nobility in Jenny Patricia's voice had vanished. "That day, I wanted to see you." "Patricia, I found her statements difficult to understand." "I was mistaken." Jennifer felt a surge of heat rise in her chest at that very moment. However, there was no easy way to repair this wound. The sight of Lily's tears still hurt too much. "Mom, let's discuss about Dad's care." Jennifer regained her professional composure as a nurse. "But first, there's something I need you to grasp." Outside, a cold wind had begun to blow, announcing the advent of Minnesota's brutal winter. But it was also the beginning of a season of change for this family. Looking at the wintry scenery of Como Park, Jennifer silently reaffirmed her determination not to give in to resentment or wrath, but to do all she could now to protect people she loved. That night, Lily cooked cookies with a unique recipe. "Mom, I added the vanilla scent that Grandma likes." Jennifer gave her daughter a hug. Sometimes genuine compassion has the ability to heal the deepest wounds. No one understood what the long winter ahead would bring to this family. Only one thing was certain: that love sometimes heals us in the most unexpected ways. This fact was subtly conveyed by the vanilla aroma that filled the kitchen. The morning of Christmas Eve, heavy snow began falling in St. Paul. The most severe cold wave in 10 years was predicted by the weather prediction. Around 10 a.m., as the bells of the Cathedral of St. Paul chimed, Jennifer's phone rang. "Your dad went out." Patricia's distressed voice rang out. "He stated he was going to buy Lily's cookies." "What's the weather like?" Jennifer's spine froze. "He left when?" "About half an hour ago." "I fell asleep." Patricia's voice trembled. Elizabeth then called as well. I've reported it to the police, but they say searching will be difficult in this weather. Lily gazed at Jennifer nervously at their apartment by Como Park. Mom? For me, Grandpa? Lily, don't worry. Jennifer hurriedly pulled on her coat and embraced her daughter. Would you be able to spend some time with Miss S. Johnson next door? Slowly, the Honda CR-V began to move through the snowstorm. There was a lot of snow on the windshield and very little visibility. The tension inside the car was increased by the sound of the wipers frantically removing snow. Arriving at Summit Avenue, Patricia was sobbing at the entrance. Elizabeth, covered in an expensive coat, was irritably conversing on her smartphone with the police target. Dad's been mentioning recently that he often goes to Target, Elizabeth remarked, shutting up her phone. No, Jennifer said gently. Dad goes to the old bakery Lily adores. She has been learning the recipe for their cookies. In the blizzard, the three started looking. Elizabeth was stopped on an unplowed road with her Lexus. This weather makes it impossible for the ancient bakery to remain open. She was too irritated to disguise it. Meanwhile, Jennifer recalled her father's habits as a former teacher. He went through town the same way every time. In her thoughts, she plotted the quickest path to the former bakery. After that, Regent's Hospital called. An unidentified elderly man has been brought in by ambulance. Suspected hypothermia. The emergency room was bustling with people rushing to the hospital. Medical workers ran back and forth. The therapy room was filled with monitor warning noises. Robert was on the bed, looking pale. In his hands, he gripped a frozen package of cookies. His body temperature had plummeted to hazardous levels, and his cognition was foggy. Lily, cookies, Father said it again in a raspy voice. All of the family's accumulated misconceptions were abruptly revealed in that instant. The emergency doctor faced them with hard facts. Maintaining home care is risky. He requires expert 24-hour care. Elizabeth's face became hazy. However, such costs deplete my savings. Patricia opened her mouth to speak, but stopped. Supporting Elizabeth's family actually almost drained her funds. Jennifer analyzed the situation calmly. Her skill as a nurse was needed now more than ever. Mom's chronic diseases and Dad's symptoms. This can no longer be handled by family alone. You have no understanding. Elizabeth increased her voice. Thanksgiving was deceived by you, as was the entire family. Jennifer's voice was tremulous. For the past 10 years, who do you believe has been managing their medical expenses, keeping track of their prescriptions and going with them to healthcare appointments? That is, Elizabeth's tone faltered. The door to the hospital room opened at that very moment. Lily entered, clutching a box of handmade cookies. She had been informed of the emergency by Miss S. Johnson, who lived next door. I made these, Grandpa. The first tried to replicate the flavor of the cookies from that old bakery. You enjoyed by studying the recipe. The mood of the room altered with those words. Lily offered the cookies and took her grandfather's hand gently. The room was subtly filled with the aroma of vanilla. Robert started to regain consciousness gradually. Lily, thank you. Although his voice was faint, it was full of sincere love. Patricia was sobbing gently. How dumb we have been. Elizabeth II began crying, not caring that her expensive makeup was running. Due to ego and vanity, we lost sight of what's important. Jennifer observed her family in silence. The most profound crises can occasionally teach us the most valuable lessons. The snow was still falling steadily outside. However, there was an odd warmth throughout the room. It resembled an unseen light made possible by unadulterated love. After silently completing his vitals check, the nurse declared that his condition was stable. Even though the potentially fatal situation was over, this was a fresh start. By the bed, Lily talked softly to her grandfather. Next time, let's bake cookies together, Grandpa. I'll instruct you. Jennifer let out a long sigh as she gazed over Como Park's wintry scenery that evening. Although the family's future would not be easy, today's events signaled the start of significant change. Approximately 15 minutes by vehicle from Summit Avenue, Patricia stood at the window of her room at Oak Grove Senior Living, which is situated in a peaceful residential neighborhood, as the next Thanksgiving drew near. Beyond the trees that were the color of fall, the cathedral's silhouette rose. How is your blood sugar level today, Mom? On her twice-weekly nursing visit, Jennifer showed up. Now it's totally stable. Patricia had a calm look on her face. She no longer wore her expensive clothes or ostentatious accessories. Rather, a plain white apron served as a symbol of readiness for the next culinary lesson. "Lily, what are you teaching us today?" Robert called from the living room. His dementia had halted its course, and he was living quiet days. "Today we're making Grandma's recipe." Now 11 years old, Lily efficiently began preparations in the kitchen of her grandparents' room. A new family custom had emerged: the Sunday cooking class. Since learning how to make cookies in the old bakery, Lily's love of cooking has been a source of healing for the whole family. As she combined methods from YouTube to create her own recipes, the Betty Crocker recipe book became more than just a reference. It became a source of inspiration. Elizabeth and her son Tommy came in when the doorbell rang. Gone were the luxury brand bags replaced by a homemade apron. "I apologize for being late." She grinned shyly. A real estate contract dragged along. Elizabeth's life has altered drastically. She'd shifted her focus from luxury properties to general housing transactions and reformed her show-off lifestyle. She was now appropriately dividing their parents' care expenditures. "Mom, may I help too?" Tommy, aged 13, showed interest in cooking for the first time. After spending so much time on his iPad, the nephew was finally participating in family activities. Of course, Lily smiled warmly at her cousin. "You can work as my chef's assistant." Watching the family in the kitchen, Jennifer remembered last Christmas Eve. Paradoxically, the crisis of that day had served as the impetus for mending family ties. The choice to move into assisted living had not been simple. However, the 24-hour professional care and each family member shared tasks had really built true bonds. "Hey, do you recall when we were youngsters watching our mother prepare like this?" Elizabeth abruptly exclaimed to her sister. "Indeed!" Jennifer gave a modest nod. "But now, things are different. We are being taught by Lily." Patricia's eyes glistened with tears at those remarks. Here was the real joy that had been lost while she was preoccupied with pride and looks. "Here it is! Everything is finished." Lily proudly delivered a freshly cooked apple pie. Even though it was a little rough around the edges, the handcrafted pie looked great and exuded more warmth than any pricey butterball turkey. Tommy expressed sincere gratitude. However, there were no pricey tablecloths or plates. The family's faces around the table were warmer than ever before. "Thanksgiving should be like this," Patricia muttered. "Yes, Mom," Jennifer said softly. "This is authentic outdoor family time." The fall leaves whirled in the chilly north wind. However, the aroma of cinnamon and the warmth of the oven permeated the room. "Mom, did we find happiness?" Lily questioned as they drove back to Como Park. In the rearview mirror, Jennifer looked directly into her daughter's eyes. "Indeed, in the most authentic sense, we did." Love may lead us in the most surprising ways at times. Maybe it's more about the lessons an 11-year-old girl's pure heart can impart to us than it is about fancy dinners and pricey presents. The next week, the family culinary sessions would resume after the Honda CR-V leisurely navigated the dusk streets. Despite being understated, it marked the start of a brand new family tale united by sincere affection.